Imagine a single moment that changes everything, a stranger's kindness in a crowded store. This is a story of hope, of second chances, brought to you by Fable. Single dad buys diapers with last dollar. The lonely CEO behind him says, "I'll take them all." You're short by 87. The cashier's voice broke through the hum of the supermarket, like a glass of cold water to the face. Jack Carter froze. His hand hovered over the counter, holding out the last of his change. 3 quarters, a nickel, and a few pennies, worn down by time and desperation. His daughter Emma started to cry. It was a tired, hungry cry, the kind that echoed in silence and made everyone around uncomfortable. She was strapped into a faded plastic shopping cart, her tiny legs kicking the air, cheeks flushed with heat and the sticky remnants of a half-eaten cracker. Jack forced a thin, apologetic smile. "Can you take the wipes off?" "You didn't buy wipes," the cashier replied, still focused on the screen. "Oh." Jack lowered his eyes. Of course, he hadn't. There was only one item on the conveyor belt, a single pack of off-brand diapers. Size 3. That was all he had come for, all he could afford, or thought he could. He dug into his other pocket, pulling out 2 more dimes and a bent penny. He counted again, then again, still short. Behind him, someone muttered, just loud enough to be heard, "Shouldn't have kids if you can't afford them." Jack didn't turn around. He crouched beside the cart, pretending to adjust Emma's blanket while his hands searched his coat pockets for something. Anything. His fingers touched nothing but old receipts and lint. And then, what if one small act could rewrite someone's story? Stay with us on Fable to find out. His fingertips brushed a quarter. He pulled it out with cautious hope, but as he did, another penny slipped through his grasp and clinked onto the floor. It rolled in a slow arc beneath the cart. Jack lowered himself to the floor. It was cold. His knees ached. He reached for the penny, and Emma whimpered above him, reaching down toward his head with her chubby fingers. He smiled up at her, "Almost, baby. Almost." Someone in line let out a loud sigh. Another shifted noisily. The tension behind him thickened. Jack stood again, holding the rescued penny like it was made of gold. He placed it on the counter. Every cent counted. The cashier raised an eyebrow. Still 87 short. Jack's mouth opened, then closed. He didn't want to say it, but he would. He was about to tell them to put the diapers back. Then, a calm, clear voice from behind. "I'll take them. All." Jack turned. The woman behind him stood with quiet composure. She looked to be in her early 30s, tall, with soft blonde curls cascading over one shoulder. She wore a cream-colored coat and held a small shopping basket, baby food, a stuffed giraffe, a bottle of organic shampoo. She stepped forward and placed her basket on the belt. "I'll cover his items," she told the cashier gently, then looked at Jack. "Please." Jack blinked, his mouth opened again, but no words came. He looked at Emma, whose cries had turned into gentle hiccups. She stared at the woman, wide-eyed. The woman smiled at her, then turned back to the cashier. "And add a pack of wipes," she said, "and a few of those fruit pouches." The cashier looked from her to Jack, then began scanning again. Jack's chest felt tight, not from stress this time, but from the strange mix of gratitude and shame he didn't know how to carry. He tried to speak, but his throat tightened. He began. She lifted a hand gently, not to silence him, but to stop him from saying something he might regret. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "She deserves to go home clean and full. That's all." Jack looked into her eyes. There was something in them, something tired, but kind. Not pity, not superiority, just a quiet understanding. A look that said, "I've been there, too." He swallowed, then nodded. No words, just the smallest gesture of respect. Behind them, the line had gone quiet. Maybe some still judged. Maybe some felt ashamed. But none of that mattered because something rare had happened. A stranger stepped in. Not out of guilt, not for attention, but because she saw someone worth helping. What Jack didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that this woman, this kind, quiet stranger, had already crossed paths with him once before. And soon, she would again. If you believe the world needs more moments like this, if you believe in compassion without conditions, tap that hype button. It helps us share these stories with more hearts just like yours on Fable. Jack stared at the receipt as the cashier handed it to the woman behind him. He did not move. His hand tightened around the shopping bag she had just paid for. Diapers, wipes, a few fruit pouches, even a small plush toy for Emma. He could feel the weight of each item, not just in the bag, but in his chest. He turned to her slowly. His eyes were tired, the kind of tired that did not come from lack of sleep, but from years of quiet, grinding survival. He looked her straight in the eye. "I'm not a beggar," he said. It was not a protest. It was not anger. It was a wound. The words came out low and strained, edged with something raw. Evelyn Hart did not flinch. She looked at him, not with pity, not with condescension, but with calm and something deeper. Recognition. I know, she said gently. I never thought you were. Jack looked away for a second, trying to steady his breath. He was not used to this. Whatever this was, kindness made him nervous. It always came with strings. He had learned that the hard way. But then Evelyn spoke again, her voice softer than before. When I was a baby, she said, there were days I went without diapers, too. I remember the cold, the smell. I remember the way people looked at my mother when she asked for help. She paused. So, I'm not helping out of pity. I just know the feeling. That stopped him. His eyes flicked back to hers, the hardness in them giving way to a flicker of surprise. For a moment, he said nothing. Emma let out a small laugh behind him, distracted by the giraffe toy sticking out of the bag. Her tiny fingers reached for it, and Jack turned slightly to steady the cart. He looked back at Evelyn. The fight in him had softened, just a little. He gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod. Not surrender, not defeat, just respect. Thank you, he murmured. She smiled at him then. Not wide, not showy, just enough to say, you're welcome. He turned the cart and walked toward the exit. The automatic doors opened with a quiet hush, letting in the cool air of early evening. Jack pushed Emma slowly toward the parking lot, still thinking about her, about this woman with gold hair and steady eyes who had not only helped him, but understood him. At the edge of the lot, he paused beside a row of clearance bins near the exit. He reached into the shopping bag and pulled out one item. The bright red snack pouch Evelyn had asked the cashier to add last minute. It was strawberry and banana flavored, probably organic, probably overpriced. Jack stared at it in his hand for a few seconds. Then, gently, he walked back inside and placed it carefully on the impulse shelf near the register. He kept the diapers, the wipes, the giraffe because Emma already loved it. But the snack, that was more than they needed. And Jack had a rule. Take only what you cannot give back. Outside, he strapped Emma into the car seat of an old, dented pickup truck that had seen better days. The interior smelled faintly of motor oil and worn leather. She was humming now, babbling nonsense sounds. The toy giraffe clutched tightly in her lap. Jack got behind the wheel and sat there for a long moment. He had not expected anyone to help him tonight. He certainly had not expected her. He glanced in the rearview mirror. Emma grinned at her own reflection, then waved the giraffe in the air like a trophy. Jack let out a breath he had been holding all day. He did not know her name. She had not offered it, and he had not asked, but her face stayed with him. Calm, kind, familiar in a way he could not quite place. He turned the key in the ignition. The engine coughed once, then started. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he whispered to himself, just loud enough for Emma not to hear, I'm not a beggar. And somehow tonight, for the first time in a long time, he believed it. The view from the 32nd floor of Heart Baby headquarters stretched across the skyline. Glass and steel shimmered in the morning sun, reflecting a city Evelyn Hart had helped shape. But her office was quiet. Too quiet. She stood at the window, fingers turning a small, worn silver locket. The chain was frayed, the metal dulled. She had held it this way 1,000 times, out of habit, out of pain. She opened the latch. Inside, etched in shaky letters, J. Carter. A knock broke the silence. Come in, she said without turning. Margaret, her longtime assistant, entered with a stack of papers. Board reports for Midtown, she said, then paused. You're holding that locket again. Evelyn smiled faintly. Do I always do that? Only when you're thinking about the fire. Evelyn let the quiet stretch before answering. I dreamed about it again last night, she said, still staring at the city. I was 7. The orphanage was falling apart. They said it was an accident. I never believed them. Most of the kids got out. I didn't. I was upstairs. Smoke everywhere. I crawled under the bed. Couldn't breathe. I thought it was over. Then someone kicked the door in. She turned from the window, holding the locket between her fingers. Was a boy, 10 maybe, dirty jacket. He threw it over me, picked me up, and said, I got you. You're safe now. Then he carried me out. Evelyn paused. They never found him. No name, no file. Firefighters guessed he was a street kid. All I had was this. She held up the locket, which must have come off his neck when he carried me. Margaret nodded. You've been searching ever since. Not openly, but in my heart. I think I never stopped. That afternoon, Evelyn visited Hope and Hands, a non-profit supported by Heart Baby. It offered supplies and support for single parents. She came often, quietly, no press. As she passed the distribution desk, she stopped. A man stood there, a toddler in his arm, signing a clipboard. Grease stained his jeans. His boots were worn, his posture strong, steady. The girl on his hip giggled and clapped. Evelyn's heart caught. The baby from the supermarket. The man turned. It was him. They locked eyes, familiarity passing between them. Evelyn stepped closer. I didn't expect to see you again. Jack nodded. Neither did I. But thank you. Emma's doing better. She's beautiful, Evelyn said, smiling. We're just here for diapers. They said they restock Thursdays. I know, she said. I fund this place. Jack looked surprised, then he nodded. She hesitated. Do you still work on cars? Jack tilted his head. Yeah, side gigs when I can. Mostly cash work. We have vans at Heart Baby, she said. Always breaking down. If you're interested, I could set up a contract. Flexible hours, fair pay. Jack's eyes narrowed slightly. Because I'm broke? No, she said softly, because you're capable and honest, and I think you deserve a break. He held her gaze, then shifted Emma to his other arm. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. Jack turned and walked out. Evelyn remained where she was, her pulse louder than it should have been. She hadn't asked his full name. Not yet. But something about him, his voice, his presence, stayed with her like smoke. She looked down at the locket, still warm in her hand. Jay Carter, she whispered. And for the first time in years, she wondered if the boy from the fire had just come back. The garage behind Heart Baby's main warehouse was nothing fancy, just a wide, oil-stained space with flickering lights, battered tool chests, and delivery vans in various stages of decay. But to Jack Carter, it felt like purpose. For the first time in a long while, he had a routine. He arrived early each morning, Emma nestled in a second-hand baby carrier on his chest. She slept soundly against him as he worked, soothed by the rhythm of wrenches and ratchets. Jack did the best he could with limited parts. He tracked every bolt, every belt, every fix. He never padded his hours, never lied about repairs. When a part was still usable, he said so. People noticed, especially Evelyn. One Thursday, she walked into the garage unannounced. The scent of motor oil hit her instantly, but she smiled through it. Her heels clicked softly on the concrete as she approached the far end of the bay. Jack was crouched beside a van, sleeves rolled, grease on his arms. Emma sat nearby in the hollow of an old tire, giggling, waving a piece of brake line like a magic wand. Is that safe? Evelyn asked, smiling. Jack looked up, surprised. No fluid. She's fine. Just, he paused, testing her lunar landing gear. Evelyn stepped closer. Emma was surrounded by makeshift controls, two small wheels up front. Like a cockpit and tubing for a pretend horn. She said she wanted to go to the moon, Jack added. This is her training module. Evelyn laughed, genuine and unguarded. Jack felt something stir. It had been a long time since he heard laughter like that, soft, honest, from someone who meant it. Happier now than ever before, Evelyn said, looking at Emma. I try, Jack answered. A week later, Evelyn returned. This time there was no laughter. Jack was pacing outside the garage, Emma limp in his arms. Her cheeks were flushed, forehead damp. She's burning up, he said, panicked. Was going to take her to the clinic, but my truck won't start. Without hesitation, Evelyn unlocked her car. Get in. Jack climbed in without argument. The ride was quiet, except for Emma's occasional whimpers. Evelyn drove fast but careful. Jack sat stiffly, hands clenched. At the clinic, Evelyn handled the paperwork. Jack never left Emma's side. A simple fever, the doctor said. Nothing serious, but enough to shake any parent. Outside on a bench, they waited for the prescription. Jack cleared his throat. Thank you. His voice was quiet, almost cracked. It was not a casual thank you. It came from somewhere deeper. Evelyn didn't smile this time. She only nodded. You're welcome. Emma rested against Jack's chest, eyes already drifting closed. You're a good father, Evelyn said softly. Jack looked down. I'm trying. That's all it takes. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn began visiting the garage more often. She always had a reason, new parts, updated delivery schedules, but she lingered longer than needed. Jack started saving Emma's best moments to share with her. How she danced to the hum of the air compressor or her obsession with paper towels, and Evelyn found herself laughing more, smiling longer, coming back. Something was growing. Not romance, not yet, but something warm, something real. Jack, who once kept the world at arm's length, now listened for her footsteps. Evelyn, who had trusted no one but herself, began waiting for the moment he looked up and said, morning. In that grease-scented space, among engines and giggles, between sick days and soft thank yous, a friendship began. Not because they were broken, but because in each other's eyes, they finally felt seen. Can a single photo destroy a life or rebuild it? Keep listening to Whisper Fable to uncover the truth. It started with a photo, a grainy snapshot taken on someone's phone, posted to social media with a caption that was more poison than praise. It showed Evelyn Hart, elegant, composed, perfectly dressed, kneeling beside a rusty pickup truck, holding a baby girl wrapped in a faded pink blanket. The moment had been innocent, private, a fleeting second outside the family center when Jack was fumbling with the car seat straps, and Evelyn had scooped Emma into her arms with practiced ease. She had smiled down at the little girl. Emma had laughed. Someone had taken the shot. By morning, the image was everywhere. Billionaire CEO cradles poor man's baby. Is it real compassion or a PR stunt? Rich woman, poor baby. Is Evelyn Hart playing savior for the cameras? CEO uses struggling single dad to rebrand humanity into her company. The headlines screamed. Opinions poured in. Some praised her. Most did not. Talk shows speculated. Internet trolls tore her apart. Even investors started asking questions. Evelyn read it all in silence. She sat at her desk in the high-rise office, scrolling through an endless feed of comments, her face unreadable. Her phone buzzed every 30 seconds. Margaret trying to get through. Reporters asking for statements, crisis managers offering spin. She answered none of them. Instead, she closed the laptop, stood up, and walked to the window. Her reflection in the glass stared back at her, polished, successful, poised. But inside, she felt like the little girl in the orphanage again, invisible, and alone. That afternoon, Jack was under the hood of a van when his phone buzzed on the workbench. He wiped his hands on a rag and glanced at the screen. A news alert. He opened the article, then another, and another. The words hit like punches. Evelyn's name smeared across headlines. Emma's photo online for the world to see. He stood there frozen. Fury boiled up in his chest. Not because they used his image, but because they had turned her into a villain. Without thinking, he dropped the wrench, wiped his hands, and headed straight for the main building. The receptionist at Heart Baby hesitated when Jack stormed into the lobby. He did not have an appointment. He did not need one. I need to see Evelyn, he said. Now. His voice left no room for argument. 2 minutes later, the elevator doors opened. Onto the executive floor. Evelyn looked up as Jack walked in. She had not expected anyone, least of all him. Her eyes were tired, makeup faintly smudged at the corners, like she had rubbed away a few tears and pretended she hadn't. Jack stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. You don't have to take this alone, he said without preamble. She blinked. It's fine. No, it's not, he snapped, then caught himself. They're dragging your name through the mud, using me. Using Emma. Evelyn turned her gaze away. It'll pass. Jack shook his head. That doesn't mean you have to let it. Silence stretched between them, and then Evelyn exhaled, slow and shaky. I'm not crying because of the headlines, she whispered, her voice trembling for the first time. Jack stepped closer. She continued. Eyes locked on the floor. I'm crying because, for once, someone spoke up for me. You did. He said nothing. Evelyn looked up, her eyes shimmered. When I was a kid, she said, I used to dream that someone would stand between me and the world. Just once. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Jack swallowed hard. You just did that, she finished, her voice cracking. And just like that, the walls she had built around herself began to crumble. Jack nodded slowly. I didn't do anything special. You showed up, she said. That's more than most ever did. For a moment, they just stood there, two people who had grown used to carrying their own weight, finally realizing they did not have to. Not always. Outside the window, the city buzzed with noise and opinions, and the constant churn of scandal. But in that office, it was quiet, real, and for the first time in a long time, Evelyn Hart let herself feel safe. The envelope arrived in the morning mail, slipped between an overdue utility bill and a flyer for discount tires. Jack almost tossed it aside, but the logo in the top corner caught his eye. Heart Baby. He tore it open with a callous thumb, brow furrowed. Inside was a formal letter, printed on thick cream paper. It was direct and professional, signed in blue ink. We would like to offer you the position of Logistics Operations Manager. Full-time, benefits included. Start date flexible. Jack sat on the couch, the letter resting in his lap like something too heavy to lift again. He stared at it for a long time. Logistics manager, not a mechanic, not a temp worker fixing vans between diaper runs. A manager, a leader. He looked across the room at Emma, curled up on the floor with her toy giraffe and a blanket that still smelled faintly of Evelyn's perfume. He wanted to say yes, but the old voices crept in. You're not qualified. You're not that guy. They'll find out who you really are. He folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope. That evening, he stayed late at the garage, turned off the lights, locked up, drove home slowly, windshield wipers clicking back and forth across light drizzle. The sky had turned an unforgiving gray. Rain fell in scattered sheets, soaking the cracked sidewalk and the faded welcome mat in front of his small apartment. He was feeding Emma when the knock came. Not loud, just steady. He opened the door and saw her standing there. Evelyn. Her blonde curls were damp from the rain, her coat clinging to her shoulders. In her arms was a thick folded blanket, a deep navy blue lined with soft white fleece. She held it out. For Emma, she said. Jack stepped aside wordlessly and let her in. The apartment was modest, clean. A lamp in the corner glowed softly, casting a warm light across the room. Evelyn bent down and gently draped the blanket over Emma, who reached for it immediately and smiled. Jack stood by the kitchen counter, unsure what to say. I got your letter, he said finally. I figured you did. You didn't have to come. I know, she said. He hesitated, then added, I'm not sure I can do that job. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. Then she walked over slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a wounded animal. She reached for his hand. Jack, she said quietly, don't walk away from someone who believes in you. His throat tightened. I've made mistakes, he said. So have I. I dropped out of college, never finished a thing I started. You raised a child alone. You fix what's broken. You show up. That counts for more. Jack blinked hard, fighting the sting in his eyes. I'm not used to this, he said, someone seeing more than what's on the surface. I see you, Evelyn said. She squeezed his hand. And something broke open. Inside him. He lowered his head and let the tears fall, silent, unshaken, as if they had been waiting for years. Evelyn stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, steady and firm. She did not let go. Neither did he. For the first time in a long time, Jack Carter let someone hold the weight with him. And when the rain finally stopped, and Evelyn turned to go, he said two words that changed everything. I'm in. The city shimmered below like a sea of glass and light, but Evelyn Hart was not looking at it. She sat alone on the rooftop terrace of Hart Baby headquarters, the wind teasing loose strands of her curls. Her coat hung forgotten behind her chair. In her hand was a small silver locket, worn, scratched, dulled with time. She opened it gently. Inside, etched in faint, clumsy letters, J. Carter. She had carried it for over 20 years. The memory was no longer a blur, the fire, the smoke, the boy's voice. She had spent her life wondering if she would ever find him, if she would ever say, thank you. That night, she sent Jack a message. Can you meet me on the rooftop tomorrow morning? There's something I need to ask. His reply came quickly. Sure, I'll be there. The next morning, Jack stepped onto the rooftop just after sunrise. A chill hung in the air. His jacket was zipped halfway, grease still smudged faintly on his sleeves. Evelyn was already there, arms loosely crossed. She looked at him for a long moment, then spoke. Jack, what's your full name? He blinked. Jack Carter. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the locket, holding it in her open palm. Does this look familiar? Jack stepped closer. The moment he saw it, his expression shifted. He picked it up carefully, opened it. I haven't seen this in over 20 years, he murmured. This was mine. My mom gave it to me when I was little. He looked up, confused. Where did you get it? Evelyn's voice was soft. There was a fire at my orphanage. I was trapped upstairs. Couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die. Jack's eyes widened. I remember that fire, he said slowly. I lived nearby, saw the smoke. I ran over. Someone said there was still a girl inside. He trailed off. You? Evelyn nodded, eyes shining. You kicked the door in. You were just a boy. You threw your jacket over me and said, Jack whispered, I got you. You're safe now. Her breath caught. You were him. I never knew who you were. Jack said, still stunned, just that you were scared, and I had to get you out. And this, Evelyn pointed to the locket, was still in my hand when they carried me out. Jack reached into his wallet and pulled out a folded, yellowed scrap of paper. He handed it to her. She opened it. A rough evacuation list, scribbled at the bottom in a child's hand, blonde girl, room 14. Saved. I kept that ever since, Jack said. I always wondered what happened to you. Evelyn couldn't speak. Her throat was tight with emotion. She stepped closer and gently leaned her head against his shoulder. Jack froze for a moment, then slowly took her hand in his. They stood there together, wrapped in silence, surrounded by wind and sky. Below them, the city kept moving. But up, on that rooftop, time had paused. You saved my life, Evelyn whispered. And you gave mine back, Jack replied. She smiled faintly. Maybe we belonged to each other all along. Just didn't know how to find our way back. Jack didn't answer. He only held her hand tighter. And as the morning sun broke over the skyline, something lost long ago was finally found. 1 year later, the garage was gone, replaced by a glass-walled office on the third floor of Heart Baby's operations wing. But Jack still showed up early. Every morning, coffee in one hand, toolbox in the other, just in case. His new title, Director of Logistics and Community Outreach. But most people still just called him Jack. In the past year, life had shifted. He had gone from sleeping on a worn-out couch to helping build programs that changed lives. His proudest project, a workshop. At the back of Heart Baby's headquarters, where the loading docks once stood, now stood a space he had helped design. Second Chance, a skills program for single parents. Free mechanical training. Childcare on-site, hot meals, job placement help. All the things he had once needed, now offered freely to others. Evelyn had trusted him from day one. You know what it should be, she told him. Build it your way. So he did. Twice a week. Jack taught young moms and dads how to fix cars, hold a wrench, and believe in themselves. They came in uncertain. They left with oil-streaked hands and lifted chins. He saw himself in every one of them. That morning, Evelyn stood with Emma at the curb of her preschool. The little girl, now 2, was taller, chattier, and still inseparable from her stuffed giraffe. Jack approached just as Evelyn kissed Emma's forehead. Ready? He asked. Evelyn smiled and took his hand. Always. They walked back to the car. No rush, no stress, just steady love. That afternoon, Evelyn stood behind a podium at Heart Baby's new community wing. A few press, a few staff, cameras clicked softly. Today is more than the launch of a charity, she began. It's a promise that no parent should feel alone, and no child should go without. She turned slightly, gesturing toward Jack. I'm proud to introduce the new CEO of the Second Chance Foundation, she said, a man who knows what it means to fall and rise again. Jack Carter. Applause rose gently. Jack stepped forward. No tie, just a crisp shirt and quiet strength. He looked over the crowd, then began. I used to think survival was enough, he said, just getting through the day. But someone showed me. Life is about more than that. It's about being seen, about having someone believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. He glanced at Evelyn. She didn't save me. She stood beside me. That's what Second Chance is about. Standing beside someone until they can stand on their own. The applause this time came with misty eyes. Later that evening, when the lights and speeches were over, Jack, Evelyn, and Emma sat together on a bench in the park. The sunset bathed the trees in gold. The breeze smelled like cut grass. Emma slept in Jack's arms, wrapped in the same navy moon blanket Evelyn had once brought them on a stormy night. Evelyn rested her head on Jack's shoulder, one hand on Emma's back, the other curled into his. They said nothing. They did not need to. This was not a fairy tale, not a perfect ending. It was something better. It was real. A father who almost gave up. A woman who never stopped searching. A little girl who brought them together. And a second chance that made them whole. If this story moved you, reminded you of the quiet strength and kindness and second chances, don't let it be the last. Subscribe to Whisper Fable for more true-to-the-heart tales that heal, inspire, and stay with you long after the screen fades. Because somewhere out there, someone just like Jack, Evelyn, or little Emma is still waiting for hope, for love, for a moment. That changes everything. Let's keep sharing stories that matter. Stories that stir the soul, stories that bring us closer.